Welcome to the Christian Consciousness Movement, awakening and activating the Christian consciousness. Today is Monday, June 21st, 2021. It is now 7:49 p.m. and this episode is called The Attack on God and the System of Things through the laws of nature and human nature. Now, the reason why I made this video, this title, is because there's just been a lot going on within this world, within the Christian world, the biblical world, the secular world. And what I find now as I observe the physical and spiritual laws of the universe, but then going back down to the laws of nature and learning about gender nature and how men and women operate differently and can be influenced differently, I find that this whole thing from when back in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, right? When Adam and Eve ate the fruit in the garden and they spiritually died and they basically sinned. It was never really just to destroy Adam and Eve. It was really to disrupt the system of things in which God had created. And we know that at the end of the day, when it comes to the Bible, God's perfect will be done, right? We know that Jesus Christ is going to come with his second coming. We know that Satan is going to lose the war, right? But in the midst of that, what he has been up to, or what these demonic forces have been up to, is how to say, okay, how can we continuously disrupt God's system and take as much souls as we can before the time comes. And to destroy God's system, you have to destroy all his things that are his principles, going back to the commandments, taking away people from believing in him, and in essence also disrupting the order of how God would have intended things to be on earth between man and woman on certain levels of just nature. So going into it, I want to show here that out 5, right? Here we can see the order is God, man, woman, child, right? And they can do reverse engineer child, woman, man, God. But in essence, God has the complete authority over everything. And he has authority over man. Now, when man was put into place, he was there, as we know in Genesis. And then at some point, God made a woman. And now we know man has essence authority over woman. Now, when I say authority, I'm not talking about control and tell them what to do and all that type of stuff. But we see that there is that physical dominance that is there, being that the man is the masculine essence or masculine manifestation of the masculine principle, while the woman is a feminine manifestation physically of the feminine principle. We also know that, I forget based on which verse, which I'm about to find right now, that we know that the woman is the weaker vessel. And biologically we know that, yes, just genetically, biologically, men are physically stronger or have the capacity to be much physically stronger than women when, fully grown adults. We're not talking about children and all those different contexts that, people want to play with. So hold on. And it says First Peter here. So right here it says First Peter, husband likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. So here in First Peter, we acknowledge and understand that yes, women are in essence the weaker vessel. Now, after we get to the woman, we understand child. And you see, it's interesting because what is a child? A child would now be a much weaker vessel compared to a man and a woman. So this order of God, man, woman, child is really put in the place of the position of power, and which one is under, not just from a submission level, but from under an ability level. Man is weaker than God, woman is weaker than man, child is weaker than woman, man, and God. Of course, a child will end up developing into a man, and his order will be put, if it's a boy, he'll be put into a certain order, and a girl will be put into a certain order. But this is the structure. As we go through, see 1 Corinthians 11:3, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of every woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So we can see that there's this order there. Also, we have Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit yourself to your own husband as to the Lord. I want to add that context. So yes, the way a woman must submit to God, she must also submit to her husband. But of course, the husband has to be a man of God, which are different topics, or submitting to God Himself. Now, Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So as you see here, children are being told, basically obey, which is another form of submit to your parents. So when you understand this order of how things operate, right? I shared that. So one thing we must understand is based on the order of God, man, woman, child. This order is holy and shows the order of authority or superiority based on the laws of nature as created by the Father in heaven, Jehovah God, through His one and only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Right? So this is about laws of nature. It is blasphemy for a man to claim he is God, or that we can do the things that God can do. Now, people want to be like, well, the Bible verse talks about, ye are God's children of the Most High. Yes. All right, sorry, lost my video real quick, but going back here, then I say it is blasphemy for man to claim he is God, or that we can do the things that God can do. Man may be a God, right? But he is not the supreme God. Thus, he must know his place within the system of things. So as we know, right, we may be gods with a small g because we're children of the Most High, but we are not the supreme God, and thus man still has someone he must answer to, someone he must submit to, but he is not the supreme God. And as men, we must know our place in the system of things. This is why Lucifer got kicked out of heaven, because he tried to override his position, right, of trying to stay in his place and try to do more or take over more or try to have more than what was permitted to him by God. Now, it says, likewise, it would be blasphemy for women to claim to be a man and do the things men can do from a laws of nature and physiological, biological standpoint. I understand in a mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint, spiritual standpoint, those are all subjective because those can all be developed, right? A woman of God can be as in tune with the Holy Spirit as a man of God. I understand that. But when we come to the biological standpoint of the differences between man and woman, a woman cannot be a man, right? We all know that. If she was to try and get herself as strong as a man, yeah, sure, but she would have to do a lot of physical training to develop that type of capacity. But if we just left people averagely, regularly to develop without any aspect of training and stuff or whatever, a man in majority of cases is going to be biologically stronger than a woman. Now I say, however, women have let such social agendas come to play and have been used as a catalyst to likewise to destroy boys and men through emasculation. Well, why do I say this? One of the biggest things that we see in the scriptures is that there's an aspect of these what's called gender roles, right? Which I call it gender nature. And before we got to really this level of social lifestyle where all the basic needs are taken care of through massive systems that basically produce, bring things to us, we buy, and all this, all this level of capitalism, right? Things would get back to the biological aspect of things, where the tasks that would be more physical demanding would be given to the men, and the boys would be trained to learn that, while the tasks that may not have been more physical demanding would have been given to the woman. Yes, there's always context and subject and, variations and stuff like that, but on a general level of gender nature, we find that, for example, trade skills, right, would be given to the men, chopping of the wood, lifting of the heavy things, possibly the hunting of animals, right? Things that really demanded a lot of physical endurance, while domestic skills, things that happen in the home, right, will be given to the woman, like, maybe ironing, cooking, taking care of the children, etc., etc. And the reason why this is important to understand this is because you can also see that what's happening is the masculine and feminine principle always manifesting. The masculine, being the man, does the trade skills, which is the masculine jobs, right? The feminine principle, or the feminine being the woman, does the domestic skills, which are more feminine tasks, right? Meaning not as physically demanding as the masculine task. Yes, people can be tired from both. I'm not here to make this complaint. I'm just talking about the principles of how you see things manifest through nature. But being in a social world where men are not required, well, even if most men are in trade skills, right? And that's the funny thing. Most men are in trade skills. The bricklayers, the electricians, the plumbers, right, are primarily men. In a social world where a woman can have a domestic job, right, and income-wise possibly earn more than a man who does trade skills, right? This has now psychologically affected women, where they are now using, as we can see, the money aspect of things in some level to determine the worth of a man. So when the relationship happens, even though, how do I put it? Even though this man could be making a good income as, let's say, electrician or a plumber or a bricklayer, right? Possibly, if this woman's income can grow at a faster rate, or maybe even more than him doing a domestic skill, like office work or just some sort of social job, maybe nursing, something that's not as physically demanding, right? Psychologically, this causes the woman to, in some instances, look down on the man from the money aspect. See, in the past, in most cases, right, the woman wouldn't have looked down on the man, because the woman can see the man going out there and really building these things and making these things happen. I mean, wow, look at them go, right? And now they know, okay, while my husband is building the wall for Rome, right, I'll stay at home, take care of what has to go on in the home. That's just an analogy. But now a woman can be like, well, I'm not staying at home. Okay, cool. I'm going to do office work in the, I'm doing office work in the courthouse of Rome, right? And I'm making this much, dealing with all these legal matters. And yeah, sure, these guys out here, they're building the wall, but I make more than them. So in essence, the respect that a lot of women would have to men when they're doing trade things, right, has diminished due to social things or social statuses, etc., etc. Now, because of this, it has caused men to go through an escalation phase where a lot of women will say, well, he's not really a man because he's not making more than me. Or, that's what said. It's funny because this is where the laws of nature aspect of things come in with women. They're still making decisions based on primitive things, though socially we've been able to allow them not to just be below or behind based on a primitive standpoint. So now this is what puts a lot of boys into emasculation mode, because it's like, okay, I'm doing this hard work, but I'm seen as lesser of a man, and the only way I can possibly be seen more as a man is if I have more in terms of maybe more money and more social status, etc., etc. So in essence, being that women now are socially, I would possibly say, in possibly better position in a financial aspect than men, right? they're now saying these men are not masculine enough, when a lot of these men are, but they don't respect them from a money standpoint. Because most of the times when I've been speaking with a lot of women, and as you see the conversation going on, it's always about the money, about the money, it's about the money. Okay, so now men will say, okay, forget these trade skills and trade jobs, that really develop me as a man physically, in a sense. I'm going to go for something on a higher social level where I can now be above women who are making that money on their social level. And now this will cause these women to look up to me in some sense as being a man or being more masculine, which is not the case. So it's a lot of psychological things, but it first started with, unfortunately to say, how to impact the psychology of the women. Now, a lot of women are going to be like, oh, that's you're picking on the women, da 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 da. But if we go to Genesis 3, right, and we see what happened with the serpent, it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast in the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, God said, ye shall not eat every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Right? And then the serpent said unto the woman, da da da. So I'm bringing up this because the serpent knew that in order to disrupt the system of things, right? Going back to this order, back when there was Adam and Eve, there was no child yet, he had to go to the weakest vessel. And what happens when he went to the weakest vessel? He played mind games on the weakest vessel. If you read over Genesis 3, you'll see the word play, right? I thought this was what you couldn't do, da 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 da. And more importantly, what happened now to the woman after she did have her sense, as she said, and she said, the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. So the woman was competent and knew, okay, this is what the rule was. But then the serpent said unto the woman, yes, ye shall not surely die, for God doth knoweth, in that day ye eat thereof, there your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. But what did the serpent do? He sold her on something that could, in a sense, benefit her. So instead of Eve saying, this is my position, instead of Eve saying, I know this is my position, right? And I know that what you say might make some sense, but at the end of the day, this is the position that God put me in. I ain't trying to know good and evil like God, right? I'm not trying to become more. I'm staying in my position, right? Eve took the bait, and it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat. And before I continue, and so she ate, right? She ate what she was sold. She was sold something. That's why a lot of men say feminism, in a sense, sold women, I won't say a lie, but it sold them that, yes, you can do these things, but it didn't add on what happens or the negative repercussions. The same thing happened to Eve with eating the fruit, right? So now, and it played on Eve's desires. Same thing with feminism. Played on women's desires to want to be able to do more, which is great, understandable, but it has its negative cons, and that's not what Eve signed up for, or what the woman or women of today signed up for. So going, and it says, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And then eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked. So as you can see here, right, the serpent knew to go to the woman first and do wordplay on the woman, sell the woman something that would benefit her. Yes, it would benefit her, but also have a major or massive con or negative effect on the system of things. Now, where did Adam go wrong when the woman went to man? Adam should have said no. He should have told Eve, you ate the fruit. What did you do? We ain't eating it. I'm not eating it. I don't care how much I love you. It said that the reason why Adam even did it is because of how much he loved Eve, right? I don't care how much I love you. I don't care how pretty you are. I don't care if it makes me so I'm supposed to be more of a man to cater to you as a woman. You did something that went against the principles of God, and I am not going along with you. That in essence of what Adam should have done, which didn't happen. Thus he now became grafted and has been affected by sin as well. So as we can see here going, today what's happening is that in order to attack God and his system of things, it's a lot of pandering to women. Wordplay on women. Giving them benefits that do benefit them, but benefits that cause them to disrupt their position within the system of things, to the point that now a man have to as a masculine being, men have to sort of like do more for this women to psychologically comprehend them or see them as a man, right? So it's like the serpent knows, the more I give the woman to benefit socially, financially, right, to do whatever she wants, the more she's going to expect a man to have more, not realizing that, the women are not realizing that, but the serpent is not giving the men those benefits. He's giving the women those benefits, knowing that men who don't sell out are not going to be able to keep up with the social dynamics that's being developed through the psychology of women being this way. And either the man's going to compromise his soul by selling his soul to gain that level so he can finally get that respect by that woman, or he will just have to be looked on or looked below or emasculated by these women, thus disrupting the system of things, because you find that all these women now, they're saying there's no man they can marry, there's no man they can marry, there's plenty of men they can marry, but from a natural standpoint, a nature standpoint, they are looking down on these men, because what would determine if a man could be a provider and a protector is no longer his physical capability of going out there and hunting and gathering and building and bringing back. It's what can he bring to the table financially for many women. This will go into why the principles of Christ in the New Testament is so important, because that's the ways of the Spirit, but a lot of this is based on the flesh and biological aspect of things. Thus, I continue to say now, right? I continue to say here that because of these social agendas, now the attack has come to them. But the joke is now that attack has come to a lot of women on a biological level, where men can say that they can be a woman and should be able to compete in women's sports, etc. So the thing is that what's happening is where men were saying to the women, we understand, it's different times, it's modern times, things aren't as traditional or as old school as they are, but there's still things that, it's just in the nature of a man to do and take care of. Let us do it. Don't look down on me if I'm not keeping up to where you are with your social and work life. But this is how I must operate as a man. And women are like, well, we could do it too. We could do it too. We could do it too. We could do it. We could do it. We could do it. And the men are like, yo, we understand, but stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, right? It's like man trying to be like, we could do what God could do. We could do what God could do. We could do what God could do. And God's like, yo, humble yourself, right? The women have taken so much pride in this due to the social conditioning that what has happened now is, in order for this to really, fix itself, the attack has come to the women where the biological men now are saying they can be women. So now this has created room for the gay stuff. I don't say it, LGBT stuff, right? It's created room for that. And also the attack on the child. How can we mold the child before they even develop into their gender nature? When a boy biologically develops into being a masculine, fully masculine being, a girl developing into being a fully feminine being, now they're taking a child who is the most moldable, who's still like water, and saying, hey, you could be whatever you want to be. So attacking humans from the start or from the seed. But how will God use this to fix back the proper structure? The same way women are being conditioned to say they could do what men could do, now transgender men are saying they can do what women can do. And guess what? Women are being forced to acknowledge there's a biological difference between men. So this will be a whole other video, but what I found from observation is women acknowledge that there is a biological difference between men. They acknowledge that there is a difference between men and women, and they acknowledge that there's a certain position that men should take within the dynamic of the system of things, especially in the family unit. However, And this is where that's why a lot of men say the double standards. They only care about things when it benefits them, but when it doesn't benefit them, it's a man, 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 man. So women acknowledge this even though they may say they don't. What happens now is due to this transgender stuff, women are going to be forced to like basically confess. We acknowledge the difference. And you know what? I'm sorry if maybe, let's say, I know I make more than you, whatever, we're different socially, but you know what? Based on the principles of things, let me allow you to stay in your lane and do what you do best as a man, and let me do what I do best as a woman, and whatever we do outside in the world work-wise, let us not use that to conflict with each other. This is what it would take for a lot of women to really help the system of things come back, because a lot of men are trying to speak up about this, and men are still getting the backlash because, believe it or not, the devil knows that a man who can stand his ground is very, very, very dangerous man. This is why you've seen all the prophets of the past. They stood their ground when it came to BS like this, and they were able to reorder the structure. But the more he can keep feeding the women benefits that benefit them without telling them the negative pros and cons that they're not going to like, it affects the men of God who are trying to do things the right way. But in essence, a lot of women basically get their blessings from Satan. I'm not going to edit that out. That's what I've observed. That's why a lot of the government and stuff like that puts so much assistance to them, because the government kind of acknowledges them as the weaker vessel and say, okay, because they're the weaker vessel and they know that they're the weaker vessel, we can sell them on how we can make them grow faster or more, while forget about the men. They could do what they can do, and yada yada yada. That's a whole different topic. So the biggest solution is that it's up to the women who are confident in upholding biblical principles over the benefits of the world, and will require women to work with and edify men. I want to say men of God, men who uphold biblical principles, who are also speaking against these things and not compromise and sell out for opportunities. God, when Eve ate that fruit, she sold out. A lot of people, Eve sold out because Eve knew that she wasn't supposed to eat it. But what? Oh, I could be wiser. I could be like God. I could whatever. You know what I'm saying? She sold out. And then Adam sold out because he could not stand his ground and tell his woman, no, God said we ain't supposed to do it. Don't do it. And it's funny because this is what a lot of women say. Oh, men don't hold the ground. Men don't stand in position. They say that until it comes to a time where a man does hold his ground and stand in his position. And then they say, oh, well, I don't like that. I'm not going to submit to you, da 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 da. All these different stuff of what happens in this modern time. So as you can see, make a long story short, and I'm going all over the place because this is very hard to articulate, but you can see through observation. As Amos 3:3 says, can two walk together except they agree? Until men and women primarily can come into agreement, especially as Christians, come into agreement with biblical principles of how things worked from God's standpoint of God, man, woman, child, right? Of course, upholding the spiritual aspects of the law on the testimony and all these different things which I'll talk about. We're going to have this dynamic of where Satan will constantly using the women to impact the system or affect the system of things that God created by feeding women more benefits, but not letting them know that deep down you're not going to be content, because you're going to then look down on a lot of men, because in this social world, in this world of social things alone, that desire that was in them biologically from a laws of nature standpoint is still there, but now they're still thinking a man has to have more to see him as being masculine. This is why a lot of men become toxic masculine, because they realize they have to be over aggressive, have to earn a lot of money, and sometimes they don't care how they get the money. A lot of women don't care how men get the money, but as long as a man has more, a woman often sees this man as more masculine. And there's some women that have so much that to the point that they have all these trust issues with guys and stuff like that, which is a different other topic. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to watch this. I hope this made sense. Watch this video over a couple times because it's very hard for me to really articulate what I'm observing is going on. But we can see that going back to Genesis, it's the same game that was played. Go to the woman, tell her the benefits of doing something that may be out of dynamics with the system of things. She takes the bait versus upholding the principles. Then she goes to the man, expects the man to pander to her and make her happy versus having the man having to stand his ground, and then both men and women basically get affected. And that also doesn't affect God, but now God has to be figuring out how to work around all this dysfunction going on between men and women within the earth. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to watch this. Hope that made sense. And leave any comments on what you think as well, and put it below.